Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me in this valuable webinar on understanding your bone tissue from the Ayurvedic point of view. It's important to understand here that I'll be explaining this from the Ayurvedic perspective, which is the view of human body-based Ayurveda, which is more functional in comparison with a Western view. And we're going to talk about first the signs and symptoms of imbalance of this tissue, and then we're going to talk about different causes for these imbalances, and then we'll talk about treatments. First, I just want to talk about bone tissue. I'm referring to it as tissue in Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, there are 7 different tissues in the body. Rasa, the lymphatic system, and the blood plasma, the kind of the liquid of your body. This is the first thing to receive nutrients from the body. And then the rakta, which is the blood, which is then carrying the nutrients throughout the whole body. And then the mamsa, which is the muscle, which is using up these nutrients right away. And then the meda, where any extra nutrients is stored. And the fat tissue is fat tissue. And then the ashti, which is the bone tissue. So according to Ayurveda, each tissue feeds the next tissue. So when we digest food, first it goes into this kind of liquid form. We call it ahara rasa, which is like liquid food, basically. And this goes into our tissue and then goes into our blood. And then the blood supplies the nutrients to the muscles. And then supplying additional nutrients to store in the fat. And then the fat tissue is let's say, supporting the bone tissue. So this is a very important point to understand from the point of view from Ayurveda, because that would mean that if you're not getting enough fat tissue, for example, then this is one of the main sources of nutrients, not just magnesium, calcium, zinc, and these trace minerals supporting the bones, but also very important, this is fat tissue. So this is the perspective of Ayurveda. So if you don't have enough fat tissue, muscle tissue, or sufficiently complete blood, with nutrients and red blood cells, then you're going to have depletion in the later tissues, which include, in this case, the bone tissue. So this is the view that Ayurveda has, and I find it quite accurate and quite effective in both understanding and diagnosing imbalances with the bone tissue, but also in treating, this condition. So let's talk about first the typical imbalances that we have with our bone tissue. And of course, we know our bone tissue is the most dense of all tissue in our body. It's very important to hold up this whole structure and form of the body. And it's formed that 80% of it is formed with minerals, or we could say the earth element, and then 50% of it is air. And there's a small percent, which is metabolic actions that are taking place, particularly in the bone marrow. And at a cellular matrix, we know that bones are made of these minerals, not just calcium and magnesium, but iron, copper, mineral salts, and all trace minerals are forming these bones. So that's just to have an understanding of what's forming the bones. And also, our subject is really on this tissue. Why does it talk about nails and hair? And really, we could include teeth, because nails and hair are the waste product of your bone, and the teeth are like sub tissue of the bone. So if you look at your teeth, they look like bones. They're and we can see the condition of our own bones by evaluating our teeth, our nails, and our hair. But we're going to talk about the differences. So we're really talking about all these as one: the bones, the nails, the teeth, and the hair. The hair and the nails being the waste product being made from the bone tissue. And we're able to read the condition of your bones by your fingernails, and your hair and your teeth for that matter. And we're going to talk about that. So that's why the subject is encompassing these, what seems to be unrelated, but in fact related tissue in our body. So, of course, Ayurveda is a tridoshic system. So everything is looked at through the eyes of the three doshas. So we look at the body in terms of whether there's a vata imbalance, pitta imbalance, or kapha imbalance. So vata would generally be depleted. If you're a vata person, you're thin, cold, dry, light, active, possibly, or more likely underweight or thin, or lower body fat, or lighter body. So if your bone tissue is too vata, maybe because you are too vata thin, then signs and symptoms will be cracking joints, of course, degenerative bone conditions, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoporosis, even scoliosis, and brittle nails, brittle hair brittle falling out, and cracking nails is one of the first thoughts. Many people come to me, and I always examine everybody's fingernails because it's easy to examine, and I can see, when I see the brittle nails. Soft nails is soft bones, but brittle nails is what you really want to watch out for. Splitting, brittle, then we know the bones are also lacking in these nutrients. Of course, white spots on the nails is another sign of calcium deficiency, calcium and zinc, and often can be a sign of weak bones or degenerative bones. So vata in the bone is degenerative. You're lacking. There's a nutritional lacking of minerals, lacking of fat, and we're going to see splitting in the nails, white spots in the nails. We're going to see tooth cavities, cracking tooth, and of course, it also this type of depletion in the bone tissue can relate to thyroid dysfunction as well. So that's the first category of imbalance of the bone tissue, is vata. So if you're already a vata person, thin, dry, cold, light, underweight, not much body fat, then more than likely, then your bone tissue could be in the same state of being thin, cold, dry, light, brittle, and not strong, robust. And we're going to see this in the nails, which will become thin, dry, and brittle. And if you have cracking and inflammation of joints, then often this is due to this vata, this depletion. Particularly, we have depletion of the cartilage between the joints. This can come from low-fat diet, not enough fat in the diet, not enough oil and fat. And then there's a depletion. So when there's low fat on the body, your ribs are sticking out, you have a nice six-pack, and you're very thin, and everybody thinks you're sexy, but your bones are more likely weak because your bones are surviving off of this fat tissue. Not only are the bones really surviving off of fat tissue, but the nervous system. So you'll find the person thin, low body fat type of person will often have weak bones, fragile nails, hairs falling out, and often nerve issues as well. And then subsequently reproductive issues as well, such as infertility. So now the subject, but it shows you the harm of having too little fat in the body, particularly for these tissues, starting with bones, nerves, and then reproductive. These are the ones that are affected by a low-fat diet over time. So that would be, if you're in that category, then take note. Then you know you have vata in the bones. They're cracking, brittle, light, split nails, hairs falling out, brittle hair. Okay. The next would be pitta in the bones. So, pitta, of course, means fire. This vata means air. So when you have too much vata in the bones, there's too much air in the bones because the bones are porous. They're already 15% air anyway. So if there's too much air in there, then you have brittle, easy to have fractures. Now, if there's fire, if you have too much fire in the bones, what do you have? you have real inflammatory joint pain, inflammatory arthritis, even bone abscess, and hair loss. Because remember, this is inflammatory. So a lot of people who have inflammatory conditions, muscle pain, joint pain, rheumatoid arthritis, women, they're losing hair because this is inflamed in the muscles, and the joints. And often inflammation is systemic. We can have isolated areas of inflammation due to injury or wounds, but are certain inflammation created in the GI tract due to diet. But often inflammation is systemic, means we have muscle pain, joint pain. So if you are having inflammatory joint pain, you know it because the joints feel warm. Because when I touch people's hands, I can put my hand around the wrist and I can feel the extra heat. You can feel that your body temperature here, in this part of your body, without then move down, feel the wrist where you have your pain, or the thumb where you have some inflammation. Feel these areas. Right? If you feel heat, it's inflamed and it's hurting. It's right on the joints, particularly right on the knuckles. You can feel it right across the knuckles. Then you have pitta in the joints. You can give it fancy name if you want. You can call it, inflammatory arthritis. You can give it such names. But in Ayurvedic, pragmatic type approach here we have, and that is you have inflammation or pitta, heat in your joints. And this can result in not just hair loss, but nail infections, tooth abscess, and hyperthyroid. This is another subject talking about relationship with the thyroid and gland. But the main signs here we're really talking about for practical purposes for this webinar is inflammatory joint pain. And secondary would be hair loss, and then nail infection. So often people with these inflammatory joint pains have inflammation in their body. They don't have these toe infections too, because that toenail is part of the bone, the waste product of the bone. It's what's made. Every months you're replacing most of your whole nail. So if I want to see the growth of your nail, I can look at your fingernail. And sometimes when people go on vacation or they go to another country where they're eating completely different foods, you can see a line right through their fingernail. Just like we can see in a tree, if we look at the rings of the tree, we can see, the rings looking very thin here when they didn't have much water. The rings are looking thicker in these days, this year, where the tree had more water. Well, same with your fingernails. We can see horizontal lines during periods where you were more deficient. Mostly the lines will be vertical because that's the way that they grow. Horizontal lines are going to be more severe. I mean, something took place during that period of time. You could have been fasting, or you could have been on an even very poor diet where there wasn't much nutrition, and then you can get a horizontal line across the fingernails. But the vertical lines up and down, and they're deep crevices. We all have, if I look carefully, I can see little lines there, but they're really clear. You can't really feel them. If you see them really clear and deep, then this is this depletion of the bones, which is vata. Now, if you want to see the inflammation, then you look around the cuticles. And if you see red there and inflamed around the gums, around the teeth, then this is the inflammation in the muscles. Because when you look at the gums, what are you looking at? You're looking at your muscles. You can't see our muscles here because, we have skin and clothes and things covering it. But we can see our muscles right there in our gums, because our gums are sitting there holding the teeth. They are muscle holding them. So if you want to see the condition of your muscles, look at your gums. And if they're inflamed, and particularly around the tooth, or you're getting abscess, then abscess is pitta. Any inflammation, any burning is pitta. So if you have joint pain and it's burning and it's inflamed and it's warm, and you have this pitta in your joint. So this is the second classification balance of this, which is pitta in the joints. are the ashidatsu, or as we're talking about, bone tissue. And third category is kapha. And we know kapha is heavy, slow, thick, dense. So what happens when you have too much kapha in your joints? Well, you can get a bone spur, swelling. The joints are just stiff. You often see kapha people, big, heavy, slow, like a bear, and their bones are stiff, or they're not inflamed, not painful. They're not cracking. They're cracking because they got a lot of body fat, so there's a lot of lubrication there. They're not inflamed. They're not hot, no, but they're stiff. Just like not moving well, have a difficulty doing yoga, difficulty doing stretches. And you can see bone spurs sometimes on the toenails, and also swelling in the feet and calcification. And often you can have excess hair growth. You can have excess hair growth across the chest. You can even have extra teeth growing in, excess teeth. These would be other symptoms of, it's too much bone tissue. You're feeding the bone tissue too much, so it's growing too much, and you get bone spurs, and even scoliosis can result in this excess bone tissue. So like every tissue in our body, we want balance. We don't want too much bone tissue, or we have bone spurs, and we can have scoliosis and stiffness in our bones. We don't want too little, like they're cracking and they're breaking, and we don't want them inflamed. This is 3 categories, very simple. And you can apply this to any tissue, any food, any person, this tridoshic view. We're just applying it here in this case to our bones. So let's talk about the causes. Why would we have degenerative bones, vata in the bones, inflamed bones, pitta in the bones, or excess bone tissue, which would be kapha in the bones? Probably the most rare of the 3. Causes of decreased bone tissue, which is vata. Of course, lack of calcium, magnesium, zinc, and other minerals. Number 1 cause. And of course, people do take supplements, but many of these cheap synthetic supplements, calcium citrate, for example, is a very low grade form of calcium. And even though you may test low for calcium, and then you take your calcium citrate every day from Costco or wherever, and then you go get a blood test again, and they say, oh yeah, the calcium level's fine, but your bones aren't getting it. That's because some of these synthetic forms of calcium don't do very much for your bones at all. But consuming the synthetic calcium, and it's circulating now in your bloodstream, and in the case of magnesium, your muscles and your nerves will feel more relaxed, as people know who take magnesium. But the amount that gets the bones and actually is able to digest it by the bones is very minimal. So synthetic forms of vitamins are not good for long-term use. They were very revolutionary in the 1950s, but now we're at 2018, and we do have better and more natural sources of calcium. Maybe I'll bring a few products off of the shelf here that I have of certain natural forms of calcium, magnesium, and show you when I come to the point of treatment. But other causes of degenerative bone condition or lack of bone is also heavy metal toxicity. This is a big subject in its own, but it is a cause. Exposure to radiation is degenerating your bones. And probably the most common cause that have weak bones and fragile bones and is malabsorption, which results in malnutrition. So back to digestion. So in other words, if you're not digesting your food properly, you're not getting the nutrients out of it, you're not getting the minerals that you need. Maybe you're even having trouble with your gallbladder or your liver, so you're not producing enough bile, so you're not breaking down the fats and the fatty acids, so you're not getting healthy fat in the bloodstream, thus it's not getting into the fat tissue and supporting your bones. So all going back to poor digestion in this particular case. And probably the most common is this malabsorption due to weak digestion. Of course, this is a big subject. There's many reasons why we have poor digestion, which include poor eating habits, eating at night, too much snacking, eating when you're not hungry, poor food combining. Many reasons. I'd say 90% of my patients I see every day have chronic digestive problems. There's some product here on the shelf that I'll show you in a minute that you could take to help you. Some vitamins and minerals right up there on the top shelf, on the second shelf, right? Yep, right there. And another reason we can have degenerative bone condition is through excess exercise. So when people are trying to build bones, build tissue, put on weight, then we actually reduce down the exercise. Too much jogging, too much exercise, and then menopause, of course, another possible cause of degenerative bones. This is less estrogen the cause. Then there's more calcium and other nutrients that will be necessary to make up for this difference. It's a separate subject, but it is a cause. And many chronic illnesses, tuberculosis, thyroid, that can also create degenerative bone conditions. And insufficient milk during childhood also can lead to this in early stage, not having sufficient amount of mother's milk. And even if the mother is depleted and too vata, and then the milk is not nourishing enough, this can create a degenerative bone condition for the baby. And then, of course, another very common reason is a vata diet. What's a vata diet? A vata increasing diet. This is basically a weight loss diet. So we see this with people who are on lifelong weight loss efforts to lose weight and skipping fat. We see a lot of fat diets now where no carbs or sometimes all protein, no carbohydrates, no fat, a lot of fat. I mean, they're all over the place. But there's, as you've heard me say, and it's backed by Ayurveda, that all these are just marketing type of diets and fads that are going to come and go as they've been coming and going since the 60s. But Ayurveda has been around for thousands of years, and they advocate a unique diet for every individual. Sometimes people ask me, well, what do you eat? And I said, it doesn't really matter what I'm eating, or my belief, or what I think. It's because I'm not the postmenopausal woman with a degenerative bone condition. The client is. So what they eat is completely different than what a man would eat, or what a young child would eat, and what a person who's overweight or underweight would eat. So we're all very different. So we should never think of following a diet that somebody else prescribes to us unless they're thinking of us, not themselves. And anybody who writes a book on what you should eat is thinking about what worked for them. So what I find is people are starving themselves by skipping meals, trying to lose weight, and then they end up sacrificing nutrition and good health. And the first signs we see it is often in the reproductive system, infertility, and other areas of the reproductive system not working properly. And then nervous issues, anxiety, nervousness when you're depleted, and then bones. Bones become weak and brittle. And one of the best, we're going to talk more about causes, even a low-fat or no-dairy diet can also contribute to these type of degenerative bone conditions with tooth cavities, splitting nails. Here, of course, I'm in Southern California, in beautiful Ojai. We have a lot of vegans here, and I definitely respect anybody that wants to protect animals. And for moral reasons, I do respect not consuming animal protein, but that's outside of the scope of my practice in helping people and giving you advice. And as per Ayurveda, dairy is very important for the bone tissue. And I've seen probably hundreds of vegans who weren't having any dairy at all for many years. And almost always I can find weak fingernails, cracking fingernails, and cavities later in life, and pitting on the side of the teeth, and then often even neurological issues. So we're going to talk more about treatments, but according to Ayurveda and my own personal experience, nothing seems to do better at building the bones than dairy. Now, we're on the subject of dairy, and I know people have feelings there, and I respect any moral views on this subject. But as far as building bones, butter, cheese are some of the most effective means to build bones. I'm not saying that you have to do all types of dairy. We're not talking about dairy from our supermarket that's pasteurized or homogenized. We're talking about raw milk, raw goat milk, raw cheeses. We're not talking about the junk in supermarkets. We know this is harmful. I refer to it often as white poison. It's homogenized, so that makes it very hard to digest. It's pasteurized, so it's got no digestive enzymes in it anymore. It's very hard to digest. And even raw milk is harder to digest than, say, yogurt. And butter almost gives nobody a problem. So many people think they cannot digest dairy, and I just give them a little butter and some ghee, some organic grass-fed ghee. I said, well, if you have a reaction to this and you're truly celiac, but almost nobody ever has reaction. When it comes to yogurt, somebody just asked here, it has to be real yogurt. It can't be the junk in the store with sugars in it. It wasn't properly cultured. You can go to a health food store and get cultured yogurt that is usually in a glass jar. I think I have a sample jar here on the shelf I show people. But the best is to make it yourself, particularly in this warm weather. All you have to do is get milk and cover it with a towel and put it on a refrigerator. Put it in the oven, and it will produce yogurt. Here's one company here that I recommend. It's just Bulgarian yogurt. Comes in a glass jar and it's made with real cultures and has natural probiotics. Now, of course, yogurt's not for everybody. If you have swelling, edema, overweight, and respiratory congestions, yogurt would be counterindicated. But if you have degenerative bone conditions, then it can be very helpful to get this dairy back in the diet, both for nerve problems and bones and your reproductive system. Well, let's keep going here. So those are the causes of decreased bone tissue. And now there's causes of excess of bone tissue. Before I go there, let me do the symptoms. The symptoms of decreased bone tissue, of course, hair loss, loss of teeth, fatigue, loose joints, dry, brittle nails. We talked about cracking nails in the teeth, and craving mineral-rich foods. A lot of times people who are deficient in these minerals will chew their nails, and chewing on nails, particularly a child, can be a sign of mineral deficiency. These generally can be resolved with natural supplements. I use food-based supplements like this one here I call superfood, and we use wheatgrass, spirulina, chlorella, ashwagandha, beetroot powder, cumin, coriander, ginger, kelp to help you to digest it. And the kelp has a whole range of trace minerals. There's also an herb in it called dashamula, which means 10 roots, which is also used for minerals. So my assistant just handed me this bottle here, which I have on the shelf. It's called calcium magnesium complex, food by Food Research. And this is based 100% food. Like I said, the vitamins were revolutionary 70 years ago. But now we have the technology, the growing technology to grow these highly nutritional, dense vegetables and then dry them and extract these nutrients right from the vegetables. And there are a few other companies providing this type of natural vitamin substance besides just this company here, Doctor's Research, like Mega Foods and Garden of Life. They have food-based supplements, but I prefer to use these. They're a little bit more bulky. They have chlorella, spirulina, alfalfa, wheatgrass, and they're very nutritious. So these would be provided for somebody with this type of nutritional deficiency. Of course, we'd have to fix the digestion first, because sometimes a person could eat a lot, it's not digesting well, and still have a degenerative bone condition. because of the poor digestion. But often other times people are skipping meals, trying to lose weight, not having fat, not having carbs, juicing. And juicing isn't going to help your bones at all because there's very little in there that will support bone growth. And even shortened height can be a reason, a symptom of not enough of bone growth. So it's very important. I wouldn't personally recommend anybody to put a growing child on a dairy-free diet. One, children love dairy, and it's very obvious why, because their bodies are intelligent, often more intelligent than the stuff we're reading on Facebook, because the body has a natural intelligence to it until it becomes somewhat perverted and distorted, which can happen to adults when we start craving things that are unhealthy for us. But children, at this age are generally craving things that are healthy for them, and their bones are growing and their body's growing, and they need more protein, they need more fat, and they do very well on eating dairy. I have very little. I'm not growing much. Years ago, I used to have some respiratory issues, so I had to have a very kind of a low dairy diet. Now I don't have any respiratory issues at all, so I've really increased the amount of dairy I've used over the years, last 10 years. And I noticed, my fingernails became a lot firmer. In fact, some people who were vegans back on dairy comments were that I used to always put a nail hardener in my fingernails, sometimes to play the guitar. And now, after putting dairy back in, improving their digestion, and then other herbs, which we're going to talk about, that can build the bones, they've said they didn't need the nail hardener anymore, even to play classical guitar, that their nails were so hard. And I found the same because I play classical guitar, and I used to always have a little trouble with soft nails. And when I increased the dairy about 10 or 12 years ago, I found that my nails became much harder. So it's a good sign of strong bones. So we'll just jump back here to increased bone density. This can come from excess consumption of calcium, supplements, even dairy. So we have to get away from this thinking, something's good, something's bad. It's more you have to get it just right. Have to show a little bit more sophistication here, and thinking just good, bad, good, bad. It's kind of a childish type of view of life and people and food. So dairy is definitely the case. It can be very good for some people, and other people, they cannot have too much. Obviously, if you're overweight and you don't want, and you have big giant bones already, you don't need to keep eating dairy. But if you're thin and you're underweight and you already have the symptoms of these degenerative bone conditions like cracking joints, a lot of times I ask people, do they have cracking joints? And even young people have cracking joints, and usually I can conclude right then that they're on a low-fat diet just by the fact that they have these cracking joints. So let's talk about, we're not going to talk too much about the excesses. Let's focus back on the two main categories which people have, the degenerative bones and inflamed bones. And of course, Ayurveda has treatments for these conditions. And we'll talk about, like, for degenerative bones, we use we don't have this one here. This is basically a formula for bone, called Pitta Pain and Detox for Pitta. But the main ingredient here is what we call Kaishor Guglu. And Kaishor Guglu is a Guglu. Guglu is a type of resin. Here I have a pound of it right here. There's a pound of resin. And this Guglus, they're very good at cleaning out the joints and reducing joint pain, arthritic pain in the joints, in the muscles. So there's a particular type for warm inflammatory joints. And that formula, it's about 12, 15 herbs, is called Kaishor Guglu. And Kaishor Guglu for inflammatory joint conditions. Now we would combine that with, an anti-inflammatory formula. So if you had inflammatory joint pain, you can call it rheumatoid arthritis, if you like that name. But these would be two things we give. This for the inflammation. This is usually mostly boswellia, better known as frankincense. Much more powerful than turmeric. You'd have to take a lot of turmeric to reduce your inflammation. I've known people that told me they were taking 5 or 6 tablespoons of turmeric a day to reduce their inflammation. And I gave them 1 teaspoon a day of boswellia, frankincense, and this did even better than their 5 tablespoons. So not to say that turmeric isn't anti-inflammatory, but it's such a mild anti-inflammatory. It's not used that much in actual clinical practices. It should be used in cooking on a daily basis. So we give them this boswellia formula plus this gugulu, kaishar gugulu, and there's a few herbs in here that are analgesic herbs. This means they reduce pain. And that's nirgundi. Nirgundi, we also use it for an oil for joint pain. Nirgundi oil, and then musta, which is another good herb for vata, and amlaki, which we know is very high in antioxidants and vitamin C and anti-inflammatory in its own right. So that's a combination for the inflammatory bones, kind of right there first. And we can also talk about foods that are good for this inflammatory bone condition as well. Generally, sweet things, sweet fruits, not sour, help a lot. And avoiding, when your bones are really inflamed and heating, you don't want to use a lot of garlic, chili pepper, and increase the heat, because when the heat gets too high in the body, it can destroy the tissue, and that's what inflammation is doing. It's destroying your tissue. It's like a fire going on in your body, so you don't want to add to the fire by having vinegar, salty foods, sour foods, pungent foods. You want to have more sweet and bitter taste. Sweet as in sweet fruit, bitter as in bitter greens. And then for all cases of building bones, sesame seeds are used. I have a little sample here. I show people tahini paste by the raccoon company. My kid was young. So it's made by a raccoon, believe me. And tahini is very good for building bones. So anybody with a degenerative bone condition can have 1 teaspoon of tahini a day. In fact, there's many home remedies in Ayurveda where you get white sesame seeds and soak them overnight with a little salt, and then put them right in your mouth. Chew on them every day, and this strengthens your teeth and helps to avoid cavity. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to avoid cavities in your hair. We're just on this inflammatory joint condition right now. So you want to bring down inflammation everywhere, and then use these herbal products to clean the joints out, like kaishar gugulu. Now, if the joints are depleted, you have osteopenia or degenerative joint condition, then we have a different one, and you would use Yogaraj gugulu. Yogaraj gugulu is also a gugulu formula, but it's for degenerative bones. And it's also good for just weak bones, cracking bones. So it's bringing down the pain and inflammation and building the bones all in one shot. Indians already have formulas for all these categories of conditions. You don't have to think up what to do. It's already been designed thousands of years ago. So you're following a system. I'm explaining Ayurvedic system here, an Ayurvedic approach to these conditions. And Yogaraj gugulu is used, and if there's no heat or inflammation, then we don't need the inflammatory. Then we put them on a balancing diet, high-fat diet, high-protein diet, with plenty of dairy, and using Yogaraj gugulu, we can make these bones strong just in a matter of months. Because all of our tissue is regenerating on a daily basis. And when you break your arm, you put it in a cast, 6 weeks later, you come out, your bones are grown. So it shows your bones are growing and able to rebuild at a cellular level. So they're getting the right nutrients and right support. Can't be depriving them. That's the problem with a lot of these diets we have, where people are focusing on losing weight. They're obsessed with this, and then they get that skinny little waist and the 6-pack, and the ribs are sticking out and everything. The bones are sticking out, and they're very happy with this. But the rest of the body will be depleted, kind of throwing nutrition out the window and sacrificing nutrition and good health for a thin figure. So I don't ever recommend that. I don't think, nor does Ayurveda believe a thin body is a healthy body. The body should have a little bit of excess, a little bit of extra fat, a little bit of extra weight, so it can survive and not be anxious and nervous between meals or in at times where there's no food. So let's see here. We have some more products here. Let's go. There's many herbs, in fact, very good for building bones. I mean, I have a formula right here. It's called Bone Building Formula. And one of the things that we put in it is, and I think I have it right here, called Prakruiti-Vikruti. That's Prakruiti-Vikruti. It's flown right in there from India. And this is processed coral from the ocean, powdered up. And people have been using this for a long time to build bones. Also, egg shells have also been used, but you have to boil them and grind them up into powder and boil them and then grind them up and a few times to make them really digestible. But egg shells have also been used. Even seashells have been used. But the most effective and easiest to digest is the coral. And this coral still has been treated. It's just not ground up. It's been treated with other herbs. Sometimes as minimum up to 10 times. It's baked in other herbs like pitla, dried, baked again, dried, baked 10 times, even up to 100. And that makes it digestible. Another great nutrient is shilajit. I'm sure some of you have heard of shilajit. There's a half pound of pure shilajit powder. And shilajit is a mineral sap that has all the trace minerals. People call it the Ayurvedic mineral supplement because it has not just folic acid, but a whole range of trace minerals. So this is also in the bone building formula. We have the coral in there, Prakruiti-Vikruti. We have Arjuna, which is for the bones, and Dashamula. We were talking earlier about Dashamula. I think we were going to look for it over there. Oh, there we go. Here's Dashamula right here. Of course, doesn't look exciting there, but Dashamula, Dasha means Dash means 10. Mula means the root. So 10 roots. So this is made of 10 roots ground up into powder. And it's the roots that are the most nutritious. When you have degenerative bone, you want to eat the roots, beets, the carrots, and because they're closer to the earth, they have more mineral content to them. So this is Dashamula's type of mineral supplement used in Ayurveda. And it's very good for vata. It's anti-inflammatory for inflammatory joint pains. So that's also in there. And then we even have a little moringa. Now, I know a lot of people have heard about moringa. It can't be used for everything. You can't just be taking teaspoons of this a day. It's very heating, and we use it for cancer prevention and other serious conditions, but it's also highly nutritious. So we put it in there. This is a type of calcium-based nutritional supplement based on those Dashamula and coral and some other supportive herbs, including shilajit. And that combined with a superfood here of the greens, like spirulina, chlorella, wheatgrass juice. This is a complete, could replace all of your non-fat soluble vitamins and increase your bone density right off the bat. So, and here's another, we're kind of talking nutrition now because we're talking about the vata, the degenerative bone condition, the weak bone, the cracking bones, the hair falling out. So instead of drinking water all day long, water really has very little minerals, particularly most of our water now is processed. I mean, people say, should I use this reverse osmosis? Should I use all this this type of water processing technology? I said, why? Do you want processed food? No. So why are you processing your water? Because if you over-treat and over-process your water, all the minerals are taken out. So, of course, some of these systems try to add the minerals back into the water, but it's better to be taking the spring water like up here in Ojai, or at least well water, and then maybe just putting it through filtration system like the Berkeley filter, so you still have the minerals. But another way is to add them back in, and this vitamin mineral tea is basically using herbs like nettle, one of the most nutritious Western herbs there is, alfalfa, which is, horses are living off of it, and then horsetail, which is high in trace minerals, Hibiscus is in there more for the, the vitamin C factor, and then lemon peel, cinnamon, coriander, and stevia just for the taste. So it's tasty. But this improves nutritional levels. So if we have somebody who's very nutritionally depleted and has degenerative bone problems, just stop drinking water, drink the tea all day long. And there's people, when I sold these teas in the farmer's market, and people came by and they said, well, what tea could I take? I don't have any health problems. I would give them this tea, and many other people would say, hey, I'm drinking that tea 3 or 4 times a day. I have a lot more energy. I'm feeling a lot better. So it just shows you that, it's so much more valuable to have a nutritional tea or a nutritional drink than just water. Water is very cleansing, and you're getting enough liquid. Some people have swelling and edema. They don't even need that much liquid. Other people, they're dry, and they need a lot of liquid. And most people will even drink more liquid if it tastes good. So children, for example, do very well on this because they like it and they tend to drink more. This works very well. It says for children and elderly in particular, vitamin mineral tea. So I would give them one of the superfood formulas and the bone formula, if this was the case that we're talking about, and the vitamin tea to drink all day. And of course, if you had real pain, then I would give one of the Boogaloo substances. And if there was heat and inflammation, I would throw in the inflammatory substance. So let's see what else we've got here. Well, we do have a formula for healthy nails and hair. Slightly different. We have another herb here called Bringraj. Bringraj is very good for promoting hair growth. And I brought this oil right here, which I had, and it's healthy hair. And if we look, it's sesame oil. And it's got herbs in it, and the first herb is, again, Bringraj. So oil is very good for the hair, better with these herbs like Bringraj, amlaki. Many of the same herbs that are in my nail and hair formula are in this oil as well. And while we're on the subject of oil, it's one of the most, like we said in the beginning, the bone tissue is deriving nutrients from the fat tissue. So bones love fat. So that's why we do oil pulling. Now I just have one here. It's called a daily swish, just for sample purposes. But basically, it's just sesame oil with herbs that are somewhat also good for the teeth. So it's, give me a little bit more than just sesame oil. But that's one reason we do oil pulling. You don't do oil pulling with coconut oil only if there's inflammation or pain in the teeth, or you've got some teeth are highly sensitive to heat, pain, and coconut oil is very cooling, but that's not what you use for oil pulling. Use sesame oil, because sesame oil supports bones and supports bone growth. So if you oil pull every day, then this strengthens the bones. If you put the sesame oil on your head, then this will strengthen the hair. Now, if you have hair loss and you have a high body temperature or pitta, then you can use coconut oil on the hair. Just like if you had inflammation in the mouth, then you can use coconut oil in the mouth. But traditionally, we're using sesame oil with herbs in it, just like this product. And the main herb for the hair is this Bringraj. It's like 70% of this. And this is helping, it says, for hair loss, thinning, and balding. Here's another product from my teacher in India. It's called Radiant Skin Nail and Hair. And he's also got some of the same herbs that we're just talking about here. In fact, I learned a lot from him and copied some of those. And again, I want to remember that tahini or sesame seeds is one of the best things for building your bones. So instead of using peanut butter, because you really shouldn't use peanut butter, it's not a nut, it's a legume hiding as a nut. And it's hard to digest, and people have a lot of allergies to it. And sunflower butter would be better, almond butter. You have to be careful with these nut butters, that it can become rancid very quickly and create inflammatory conditions and even lead to loose stools. But that aside, if you want to build bones and you're having nut butters, then switch over to sesame butter, because sesame butter and sesame seeds are really one of the best for building your bones. So just so we review, we have 3 main kind of conditions to your bones. You want to know the state of your bones. Like in Ayurveda, when we diagnose a patient, we're not looking at just blood work, but we're looking at all of these different tissues in the body: the blood tissue, the bone tissue, the fat tissue, the muscle tissue, the nerve tissue, reproductive tissue, and everything should be balanced. And so here we're looking just at bone tissue. So for bone tissue, we don't want too much bone, or we get bone spurs and difficult stiffness in the joints, and we don't want too little bone growth. So we get fragile bones and can lead to breaking of bones and bone fractures, hair falling out, weak nails, splitting nails, and even cavities. So that, and then we mentioned the treatment is, of course, more dairy, cheese, butter, to the degree which you can digest, more fat, oil in the diet, ghee, butter being one of the best, and adding more nutrients and vitamins. Some of the herbs that I mentioned here today can be used. Some of the supplements that I mentioned here today could be used to build those bones. And then the third category is this inflammatory bone condition, rheumatoid arthritis. There we have to bring down inflammation in the whole body, because more than likely there's inflammation more than other places besides just the joints. And again, we have proper diet. Can't be having inflammatory foods. And we know now, of course, what are these inflammatory foods? They're not dairy. Butter is not inflammatory. It's tomatoes, the nightshades, tomatoes, eggplant, paprika, whatever. These are very inflammatory. And of course, if you're having digestive problems, then the immune system can react because of your poor digestion. It's not fully digested the food, and then you can get some inflammation there, like food allergies. So you want to really improve the digestion in all cases. Make sure digestion is good, so you're getting these nutrients. But with inflammatory joint pains, once you're in the arthritic category, then you're going to need some herbs. And in Ayurveda, we already have Simananda Gugulu for stiff joints, Yogaraj Gugulu for degenerative inflamed joints, and Kaishor Gugulu for inflamed and hot arthritic pain. In Ayurveda, we have, it's very sophisticated. We don't just say, hey, we have joint pain, but there's types of joint pain, and there's types of herbs that match this particular type of pain, because the goal is to remove the cause of the problem, not just take a opioid or a painkiller or an analgesic herb for that matter, and just eliminate the pain for a day, but to remove the cause. And that's what these herbs do. The nutritional ones, like Dashamula and Shilajit, are building the bones and making them stronger. The ones like Boswellia are reducing the inflammation down. These Gugulu substances are actually cleaning and detoxing the bones. And that is one cause of inflammatory condition. One of the major causes is toxin accumulating in our body over the years. And since we're on the whole subject here of bones, teeth, nails, hair, and we know that some minerals that are forming this tissue, more than any other tissue in our body, needs a high amount of minerals. That's why we can see mineral deficiency first in our fingernails. And then we'll see it in hair loss. Then we'll see it in the joints. Then we'll see it in the teeth. So, obviously having sufficient minerals and sometimes taking some supplements, hopefully natural ones, and you can overcome this. But we also know that it's the colon, not the small intestines, the large intestines, that's doing the most of the absorption of minerals. So if you have diarrhea, for example, or just loose stools, which, those people have it, don't really know about it. People don't talk about it, but I'm talking to people every day about their bowel movements, and a big portion of the population is having what we call like loose stools, 4, 5, 6 bowel movements a day. So the transit is too fast, means it's not in the colon for very long. Colon doesn't have time to, extract the water and become dehydrated. Also, doesn't have enough time to extract all the minerals, because the water and the electrolytes are all coming out together, and that's why you have the stools. And that's why this person feels dry and weak over time, is because they're really being drained of many of these minerals and water. So they're becoming dehydrated and having mineral deficiencies. And after some period of time, we're going to see the effects on the fingernail, effects on the hair, effects on the teeth, and then ultimately the effects on the joint, just from having loose stools. And the same goes the other direction if we have constipation. And of course, constipation is even just having one bowel movement a day. Most people don't even know what healthy bowel movements are. I have many videos on this subject that, on my YouTube channel. I encourage you to watch. And if we have, say, constipation, like missing a bowel movement every day or just once a day for 30, 40 years, then this affects also the absorption of minerals and can create diverticuli, diverticular inflammation in the colon. But also autotoxicity, these toxins that are being expelled through the fecal matter, accompanying that are holding the bile, which is holding much of the toxins that the liver is extracted from the system. And this is still in the fecal matter, and because it's not being passed quick enough, it's there an extra day or two longer than it should, then it ends up being reabsorbed back into the system, and this becomes toxins for the body. And this gets lodged in the joints at different parts, and even in the head and the mind. You can get headaches from these toxins, joint pain from these toxins, muscle inflammation from these toxins, all coming from your 20, 30, 40 years of being constipated. And of course, there's other ways to accumulate toxins, heavy metals, environmental toxins, eating food that's not organic. When we're eating food that's not organic, we can basically just say we're eating pesticides, chemicals, and other artificial substances that in small amounts our body probably can manage, but long term, over years, we know this is leading to many health problems, and including inflammation, liver toxicity, and even cancer. So these environmental are a big factor. Poor digestion is also a big factor, because when you are digesting your food improperly or incompletely, you're creating toxins right then. Just like the engine, in a car burns, it creates a soot and smoke. I don't know if you've ever seen a really good car mechanic. He exhaust pipe and he wipes his finger there and he sees a lot of soot and he knows the engine's not burning good. So those are toxins made by the engine because it's not burning well, and this of course will congest and clog up the valves and the rings in the engine, and decreases performance. And the same thing for us. So if we're not digesting well, not only are we not getting nutrients, but we're making additional toxins. These toxins then circulate in the body and become inflammatory over time, and then thus we have inflammatory conditions, including inflammatory joint pain. So detoxing these joints, not just juice fasting or not this type of detoxing, but detoxing the joints, which is very different than detoxing the GI tract, is often very important for these inflammatory conditions to bring this pain down. So I think we covered a lot there. I hope this helped you to understand the state of your bone tissue, the importance of your bone tissue, and not having too much, not having too little, and not letting it be inflamed. And some of the causes of too little bone tissue: too much fasting, not enough dairy, not enough fat, not enough protein; inflammatory bone tissue, too much toxins, too much accumulating in the body; and too much bone tissue can come from too much dairy, too much protein, and too much food as well. So we want to get the right balance, and it's good to learn how to read fingernails. This can tell you a lot of information about your bone tissue, and that's what's done in Ayurveda, is mostly reading the fingernails to determine the state of your bones. And so if you need help with any of these conditions, feel free to contact me. And I hope this helped you, and I sincerely hope my information was accurate. And if not, forgive me. I'm doing my best to translate Ayurveda to the extent of my own knowledge and experience. This is a very vast subject. And these herbs, there's thousands and thousands of herbs in Ayurveda. And I'm just other herbs that can be used instead of the ones that I mentioned here, but these are the ones that I'm using and have used successfully. So I'm just happy to share this information with you on which herbs and which diet to follow, improving these conditions of the bone. So thank you once again. I wish you the best of good health. I wish you to have the strong bones, strong teeth, and good hair growth. Okay? Thank you very much, ladies. Greetings from beautiful Southern California. I sincerely hope you learned from this video and benefited from all the information. This knowledge is not my knowledge, nor is this information new, but part of the ancient healthcare system called Ayurveda, the science of life. I hope my videos explaining the Ayurvedic approach in a simple and clear manner help you to overcome your health issues. However, if you have a complex or serious health condition, I highly recommend that you contact me personally so I can meet with you here in my clinic in Ojai, California, or in an online conference call, so I can properly diagnose your condition and provide you with an individualized diet and custom herbal formulas. Then I will follow up and continue to support you until you have recovered. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel below and visit my website for more information, appointment fees, upcoming events, and my schedule, where you can book an appointment directly online. Thank you once again, and I wish you the best